Okay, now in the next part, this is the coup de grace, okay, of all the stuff we've looked at so far. We need to find the side lengths of x and y, the actual side lengths of x and y, okay? This is 15, the actual side length there is 15, okay? Now, here's how we're going to do this. Now, use this paper I gave you right here. You're just going to look right here, okay? These are your special right triangles. So remember we talked about the 60, 30, 90. Opposite the 30 is 1. The side opposite the 60 is the square root of 3. The side opposite the right angle, the 90-degree angle, is 2. Now 45, 45, 90. Opposite the right angle is the square root of 2. Opposite each 45 is the side length of 1. Okay? So you're going to use that there. So this is a 45, 45, 90. So opposite the right angle, so we're on this one right here, okay? So, let's see where I'm at. So 45, 45, 90. So opposite the 45 is 1, 1, square root of 2. So go opposite one of your 45s and put a 1 in parentheses right after the x. X is the actual side length, 1's the ratio for the side length, okay? Now, put your pencil on the other 45 and put a 1 in parentheses. Make sure you put it in parentheses right next to 15. After the y, you're going to put the square root of 2. Now, this is how you find the actual side lengths. We want to find the side lengths of x. So put x over the actual side length x over the ratio of that side 1 equals... And then you want to use another side, but you want to use another side that we actually have both the numbers, okay? So x is to 1, what 15 is to 1. Don't use that because that's another variable, okay? So x over 1, and then we're going to put 15 over 1. And then we're going to cross multiply and divide. So it's going to be 1 times 15 divided by 1. So 1 times 15 is 15 divided by 1 is 15. So x is 15. Which makes sense because 15, 1, 15, 1. They'd be the same. Now let's talk about our y. Okay. So y, put y with the actual side length y over the ratio of the side length, the square root of 2. Okay. Now again, we want to use the 15 over 1 just like we did here. So now you cross multiply and divide. So you're going to write... Put the 15 first, put the coefficient before the square root, and then divide it by 1. Well, square root's irrational. It only divides by 1. We don't need to simplify the square root. It's not a perfect square, okay? And then 15 divided by 1 is 15. So y is equal to 15 square root 2. Because see, 15 divided by 1 is going to give me 15, and there'll still be that square root of 2 there, okay? So those are your actual side lengths, okay? This crap is just the ratio, okay? All right, now we're at 30, 60, 90. 30, 60, 90. Now 30, 60, 90 is different. 30 is 1, 60 is the square root of 3, and 90 is 2 4. And that says so right there, okay? Okay, so go across from your 30 and put 1 in parentheses there, okay? Go across from your 60 and put a square root of 3 in parentheses next to the y. Okay. Now across from your right angle, you're going to put a 2 right next to the 4. So now we got to solve for x. Okay. So x over 1. And then I don't want to use that side. I want to use this side because that's where I don't have any variables. So x1, 4, 2. That's why you got to use parentheses so you know what matches with what. This is an easy one. It's 1 times 4 divided by 2. No square root, so 1 times 4 is 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So x equals 2. So 2, 1. Okay, y. Now put y over the square root of 3. And we're going to use that same 4, 2. Again, this is the actual, this is the ratio, okay? Actual, put actual on top, ratio on bottom. Actual, ratio. Okay, so write down 4 times the square root of 3. You don't multiply those because 4 is a coefficient, 3 is a square root. See, here they were both coefficients. Okay, and then divided by 2. Square root's on the top, so that's good. So we can go ahead and divide the 4 by the 2. So that's 4 divided by 2 is 2, square root 3, and put y equals right there. So those are the actual side lengths, exact. Okay, we're back to a 45, 45, 90. So 45, 45, 90. Okay, so remember 45, 45, 90. Across from the 45s you have 1. Across from the 90 you have the square root of 2. So 1, 1, and then the square root of 2. Okay, x. Okay, let's put x over 1. Remember, put the actual measurement over the ratio measurement. And then we better go with the 125, 1. Okay. So this is easy. 1 times 25 divided by 1. So that's 25 divided by 1 is 25. Makes sense because you'd have 125 and then 1 with 25. Okay, now y. Put your y over the square root of 2. Remember, in the parentheses is your ratio. Just put that on bottom. You could put it on top too. It doesn't matter, but just be consistent so you're not confused. And we want to use that same thing, the 25 over the 1. So we're going to take the square root of 25 times 2. Write that as 25 first times the square root of 2. Divided by 1. 25 divided by 1 is 25. Then we just put the square root of 2 next to it because we can't multiply those because it's a coefficient times the square root. Y equals. Okay. Alright, next one, another 45, 45, 90. So the 45s are 1, the 90 is the square root of 2. Okay, so 1, 1, and square root of 2. Put it in parentheses. So let's solve for x. Let's put x over the square root of 2. And for the other side, I'm going to put the 6 over the 1. You don't want to use that because you won't be able to solve it. So square root of 2, 6 times the square root of 2 divided by 1. 6 divided by 1 is 6. Put the square root of 2 connected. X equals. Okay. Now how about the y? I'm guessing it's going to be 6 because 6, 1, 6, 1 would make sense, but let's set it up. So y over 1 and then 6 over 1. So 1 times 6 divided by 1. Well, that's easy. It's just 6 divided by 1, which is 6. Makes sense because the sides opposite the 45 should be the same. So 6, 6. Okay, let's keep it rolling here. I forgot some things. That's x, that's y. That's x, that's y. I have a habit of forgetting that. Okay. Okay, so looking to me like we have a 90. That's a 90. So if that's 30, this would have to be 60. Okay. Sometimes I forget the angle, and that's fine too. Okay, so 30, 60, 90. Just write that down there. So 30 is 1, 60 is the square root of 3, and 90 is 2. If you forget, just look down there. 1, square root of 3, and 2. So go opposite the 30 and put a 1 in parentheses somewhere. Okay. Go opposite the 60 and put a square root of 3 in parentheses. You want to put parentheses, otherwise it's screwed up because you won't know what you'll forget what side's the actual and what side's the ratio using this method. So x over the square root of 3, and I would probably then want to use the 10 over the 1, not the y over the 2. That's not going to do me any good. Okay, so I've got 10 times the square root of 3 divided by 1. Well, 10 divided by 1 is 10, and square root of 3. X equals. Okay, then the y, put your y over 2, the actual over the ratio, and then find another side where you know both the actual and the ratio. That'd be the 10 to 1 again. There's no square root here, so it's easy. 2 times 10 divided by 1. So 2 times 10 is 20, divided by 1 is 20. So y is 20. See, and again, I'm going to further elaborate on this. You know how 1 and 2, 1 times 2 is 2? Well, 10 times 2 is 20, okay? The 2 is double the 1. Y being equal to 20 would be double what 10 is. Alright, next one. If that's 30 and that's 90, that's got to be 60, okay? And you're like, well, how do you know it's 60? Well, the sides have to add up to 180. If you take 180 and subtract the 90 and subtract the 30, the angle you have remaining is 60. Can't be anything else. Okay, so 30 is 1, the square root of 3, and then 2. So 30, put the 1 in parentheses. Go to the 60 across from the 60, the side opposite the 60 is the square root of 3. Put your pencil on the right angle, and over there's 2. Okay, so x, let's put x over 1. And then I would want to use the 11 over the 2. Okay, cross multiply and divide. 1 times 11 divided by 2. So 1 times 11 is 11. 11 divided by 2 is a decimal. If you get a decimal, just leave it as the fraction. So x equals 11 over 2. Because even though that's 5.5, okay, a lot of these decimals just go on forever. So if you get any kind of decimal, just leave it as a fraction when doing these. Okay, so y over the square root of 3. And then we're going to again use the 11:2 ratio. Okay, so we're going to take 11 times the square root of 3, which we can't multiply. But I can divide just the 11 by the 2. Again, 11 divided by 2 is a decimal, so just keep that as a fraction. 11 square root of 3 over 2. If it doesn't divide it evenly, just leave it as a fraction. Okay, next one. Another 30, 60, 90. So 30 is 1, square root of 3, and 2. So put a 1, square root of 3, and 2. Okay, so x, let's put the x over the square root of 3, equals, you set up a proportion, okay? And then we're going to have to go 12 and 2. Now you did x to square root of 3, so you're doing 12 to 2. You put 2 over 12, it's screwed up. Okay, so we take 12, write 12 first. When you have a coefficient square root, you're going to write the coefficient first. You know you can't multiply them. Divide by 2. Well, I can divide 12 by 2. That's 6, square root 3. So x equals. Okay, then the y over 1. And then we're going to use that 12-2 combination again. This one's an easy one, okay? It's just 1 times 12. Since they're both coefficients, there's no square roots. It doesn't really matter the order you write it, okay? So 1 times 12 is 12. 12 divided by 2 is 6. Okay, next problem. 45, 45, 90. So 45, 45, 90 is 1, 1, square root of 2. Okay. Okay, so from the 45s, put 1. From the 90, put the square root of 2. Okay. Okay, so x first, x over 1. And then we're going to have to use the 8 over 1. Makes for an easy problem. So 1 times 8 divided by 1. That's going to be 8 divided by 1, or sorry, write that. That's 8, so x equals 8. And you know that the two 45s, opposite the two 45-degree angles are going to be the same. So if opposite there was 8, opposite there is 8. Then y, it's going to be y over the square root of 2, and then 8 over 1 again. So we take 8 times, remember a square root and a coefficient, you write the coefficient first times the square root, because you know you're not actually going to multiply, you're just going to leave it as in multiplication form divided by 1. Square root's on top, that's good. 8 divided by 1 is 8, but you still got 8 square root of 2. Okay, so 8, 8, 8 square root 2, they form a ratio. Okay, then on the last page, I did something stupid here. I wrote this dumb little triangle. Get rid of those, you don't need them. Okay, no, so I forgot. This is X, this is Y, this is X, this is Y. Okay, so 30, 60, 90. So 30 is 1, 60 is the square root of 3, 90 is 2. So 1 square root of 3 and 2. Okay, so X, put your X over 1, the actual side you're trying to find over the ratio, and then 9 over 2. Okay, no square root involved, so that's good. So you take 1 times 9 divided by 2, so that's 9 divided by 2. 9 divided by 2 is a decimal, so I prefer you just keep that as 9 over 2, please. Okay, now Y. Y was Y over square root of 3 equals, and then 9 over 2 again. Okay, so the square root of 3 times 9, just put 9 times the square root of 3. You know those can't be multiplied when you have a square root and a coefficient. Okay, we can divide the 9 by the 2, but again, 9 divided by 2 is 4.5. That's a decimal. Okay, so I prefer you just keep it like that, exactly like that. Y equals 9 square root 3 over 2. Just keep it in fraction form. Okay, X. So we got a 45, 45, 90. So it's 1, 1 square root of 2. Look at that sheet if you need it. Okay, so 1, 1, and the square root of 2. Okay, so X be X over the square root of 2. And then I know the actual side here is 8. Put the 8 over the 1. So we take square root of 2 times 8. We write that as 8 times the square root of 2. Okay, divided by 1. Okay, so you can't multiply. Okay, you can divide 8 by 1 though. That's 8. Okay, so 8 square root of 2. Okay, now on the Y. Y over 1. And then 8 over 1. So it's going to be easy. Okay, 1 times 8 divided by 1. That's going to be 8. Divided by 1. 8 divided by 1 is 8. There's no square root involved, so 8. Okay, now we got a 30, we got a 45, 45, 90. There's a 30, but that's the side length, not the angle. So 1, 1, and square root of 2. Okay, it's got to be the square root of 2. Okay, so go across from your 45, put a 1, 1, and then square root of 2. Those are your ratios, okay? So, X over 1. I want to find the other side where we know the actual side. It'd be 30 and 1. Okay? So 1 times 30 divided by 1. Okay, 1 times 30 is 30. 30 divided by 1 is 30. So X is 30. Makes sense. That's 30. Then that's got to be the same thing because they're both 45 angles. So the sides opposite them have to also be the same length. Okay, then Y. Okay, put your Y over the square root of 2. And then use that 30 and 1 again. So we're going to take 30 times the square root of 2 divided by 1. Okay, so again, we don't times those, so it's going to be 30 square root of 2 30, 30, 30 square root 2. Okay, next one, 45, 45, 90. Okay, just like the last one, 1, 1, square root of 2. So opposite your 90, that's going to be this, or go the 45 first. It doesn't matter, I guess, what you label first. Okay, and opposite the 14 is a square root of 2. Okay, so put your x over your 1. We'll find x here, y here. And then we will put, if x goes over 1, 14 goes over square root of 2. Now you're going to end up with a little thing you have to fix here. Okay, so 1 times 14 is 14 divided by the square root of 2. Now, for the first example, I end up with a square root on the bottom. Okay, we do not want that square root on the bottom. You have to rationalize that. So if you end up with a square root on the bottom, you're not going to be able to divide until you rationalize. So you put times, times, and then that square root of 2. So 1 times 14 is 14 equals, okay, and then put your square root of 2. Square root can be on top. And the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is just 2, okay? And the reason why it is because the square root of 2 times the square root of 2, those can be multiplied. It's the square root of 4, but 4 is a perfect square. It's 2, okay? Okay, now you can divide the 14 by the 2. 14 divided by 2 is 7, and then square root 2. Okay, so x equals. Okay, now the y. Okay, y over 1. And then again, you're going to use 14 over the square root of 2. So again, 1 times 14, show your work, divided by the square root of 2. Again, that square root can't be on the bottom, okay? So I rationalize them. It's when I times the top and the bottom, put times dots by the same square root that's on the bottom. So that's 14 square root of 2. Multiplying two identical square roots just give you the value in each square root without the square root. Okay. Now you can divide. 14 divided by 2 is not a decimal, it's 7. Okay. So it's 7 square root of 2. Again, if you get a decimal, you would just leave that fraction the way it is, but 14 divided by 2 is not a decimal.